Good afternoon and welcome to the Law and Crime Network. I'm Angelica Spanos. Thanks for joining us today. It is a busy day here as we are following 3 live trials this afternoon. All right, so the prosecution basically said that Nicole was afraid to face her mother's wrath when she returned home after failing college courses. They also stated that she carried out the murder in a cold and calculated manner. Joining us today to break all this down, Kirk Burkhalter, New York Law School professor. Kirk, thanks for being with us today.
You're quite welcome.
So what we've heard so far, just the opening statements from the prosecution, what do you make of that?
So I think it was a strong opening statement. So the prosecutor consistently referred to the victim as her mom as opposed to mother. So, we think about what that word evokes. When somebody says my mom, that's somebody that we hold near and dear to our heart. So hopefully, or as far as the prosecution is concerned, that would resonate with the jury. However, with regards to Nicole, who is younger, she was obviously a college student, consistently referred to her as a woman, right? So not as a child. So on one hand, we have a mom, and you would think a mom has a child, but however, Nicole was a woman. And finally, prosecutor made sure he attacked Nicole's insanity defense by evidencing the fact that she knew what was wrong based on her attempt to cover her tracks, as the prosecutor put it. So I think he got in all the major points that he kind of wanted to make.
All the essentials.
Absolutely.
There's going to be a lot to unpack. We want to listen to the defense's opening statements because, as Kirk just said, we know they are going to talk about insanity here. Let's listen. All right, interesting opening statements from the defense. They basically said that the killings were in self-defense after years of abuse and an aggressive custody battle. She also brought up that Nicole had possibly been battered as a child, and this was a defense to that. And she also laid out the guidelines of the insanity defense and explained the symptoms of schizophrenia. So we have a lot going on here with defense. Kirk, when you hear this and knowing what you know about an insanity defense, what are you thinking?
Well, it's interesting. The defense did not rebut the challenge from the prosecution, or the claim, should I say, that Nicole attempted to cover up the crime. The defense focused solely on her mental state and showing a lifetime of this mental state, referring to her as a child. They did rebut the reference to her as an adult, referring to her as a child the entire time. You have to be careful as a defense attorney, when you demonize or you attempt in any way, shape, or form to demonize the victim. Mm-hmm. However, the defense attorney did state how uncomfortable it was to even bring that up, but those are the facts. So it should be very interesting to see how the defense handles this whole aspect of Nicole attempting to flee the crime, cover up the crime. But the defense is very clear that she is not responsible because she did not know right from wrong.
And we know that, as you said, the question really isn't if she did it, it's the proving the insanity part. And what do they have to do that? That's a hard thing to do.
Well, it's a little difficult. I mean, so the defense must prove that Nicole had an inability to recognize that the wrongfulness of her actions, or recognize basically right from wrong. So this is rather difficult, because if it was something that was fairly easy, everyone who commits a heinous crime, that would be the first line of defense. What's the first thing we all think? This person must be out of their mind in order to do such a thing. And that's why we have this legal standard. In this case, clearly, just from her appearance and what occurred, yes, does Nicole probably have some form of emotional issues? I would be hard-pressed to say that she does not. But whether that inhibited her from understanding the wrongfulness of her actions, it'd be interesting to see what evidence the defense can put on.
And you said this already a bit, but one of the challenges is going to be how do they attack the fact that she tried to cover this up? Do you think that's going to be the biggest challenge of the defense for this?
I would have to think it's up in the top 2 or 3, if not the largest, because at the end of the day, why would someone attempt to elude capture or cover up a crime if they did not believe it was wrong, if they did not believe or they did not know they would be punished? So we see small children all the time cover up misdeeds, attempt to cover up misdeeds, because they know what they did was wrong. Mom and dad will punish me if they find out I broke X. So that's a large mountain to climb here.
All right, Kirk, thank you so much. We'll talk about this after the break. Stay with us here on Law and Crime. All right, so that was Wesley Rowe, again, the victim's neighbor here. And this is really interesting because he's really the eyes and ears on the scene in the next to the house. And so we heard the 911 call. And Kirk, you know, how is that important here? Because like I said, this is probably the only witness that we really have who heard anything and who saw anything. And we hear the call where he's looking out his window and telling the 911 operator what he's seeing.
Well, it's always helpful to tell a story for the jury. And by starting with when the body was discovered and right before the police arrived and hearing the 911 call. So this provides the jury with a sequence of events. They can follow this as a linear story and they can picture in their mind what occurred. So next you're likely to hear what would happen when the police arrived on the scene, what the condition of the body was, what type of indicia that would reflect. So after all, this is first-degree murder, have to show premeditation and deliberation. So this is just the beginning of a sequence of events. Very helpful for the jury to see that. Setting
everything up. Well, and you're exactly right, because next we are going to hear from the deputy who responded to the scene, the first one on the scene. Let's listen to his testimony. All right, so that is Lieutenant Robert Carr, and again, he's describing what he saw when he got to the scene. He was second there, and he had gone upstairs and found the stepfather under that blanket. So, Kirk, you know, we heard from these two officers. This is more of that scene setting, and as you said, sequencing, telling the jury what happened in that house. Nicole's gone at this point. She has already fled. So what's the prosecution trying to show by bringing in these two detectives to say this is what they saw?
Well, it seems very basic, but remember, every element, the prosecution bears the burden of proving every element of the crime. There has to be a culpable mental state. There has to be an actual criminal act, and one element is a harm. So as basic as it sounds, the prosecution does have the burden of showing that there was a murder, that these two folks were killed, and then they will have the burden of connecting the dots back to the defendant. So you can't prosecute someone for some form of homicide if there is no body.
And we know that the stepfather was covered up with this blanket. The detective explained that. Does that mean that maybe she knew what she was doing here by hiding or covering the body like that? Does that lend itself to going in that direction maybe?
There's a possibility, right? So certainly, if I'm the prosecutor, I might point to that fact amongst other facts. Perhaps, I don't know if they'll bring in testimony from some type of forensic psychological person who can testify as to what people do, all types of things to bodies after committing a crime based on how they felt about the person or how they felt about the crime. So it's definitely a possibility. But the other side of that is just very helpful for the jury to envision such a heinous sight.
And also with the mother who's on the driveway at this point, I mean, you have two scenes here that we're hearing in detail now. Not looking great here.
Right, and that also goes to premeditation. So if one body is found outside or in the driveway, another body is found inside, theoretically, if the same person committed the crime, they would have to be thoughtful about their actions, right? So I would have to commit the shooting in either the bedroom or outside and then walk to the other location, which could give me enough time for my acts to be considered premeditated.
All right, Kirk Burkhalter, thank you so much. We got to take a quick break on Law and Crime. Plenty more when we come back. Stay with us.